Hello and good evening. I am Bright Nanakwesi Amani, and this is 101 here on Metro TV. We are live across all social media platforms on Facebook and on Instagram at Metro TV Ghana. Same on Twitter and also anywhere else that you can find us. Stay with us here tonight. I'll be speaking to one of the conveners of the hashtag Fix the Country, hashtag Galamsey Must Stop, and hashtag Occupy Jolobi House. That happened over the weekend. A lot of conversations have come up. What exactly is the truth? Stay with us. After the break, you get all that. Welcome back. Oliver Baka Vormawor, lead convener of Democracy Hub, organizers of hashtag Occupy Jolobi House and hashtag Galamsey Must Stop. I can even add hashtag Fix the Country all to it. He's here with me tonight in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Great. And before this, by the time this interview is, you will have submitted yourself or given yourself into the police.
Yes, the intention is that let's have a final, sit-down conversation, and then after this, I turn myself into the police. I think one of the things that I'm very particular about, that the conversation must stay on the issue, that I don't want to become the news, and I think that the police have a propensity of a bit of sensationalism, and so we must scuff it out. And so the intention is to submit myself for arrest after this.
We are recording the interview at exactly 1:45 p.m. on 22nd, on 23rd.
23rd of September.
Yes, of September. Quite an afternoon. And by evening, time that you are watching this, he will be in the house of police. Now, tell me, did you premeditate all this?
I think that we are intentional, I must say, about how we step out to defend the constitutional rights and the freedom of assembly. I think that our engagement over the years has been that in terms of how we improve the substance of our democracy, one of the biggest bets the Constitution made was it made a bet on institutions. And is that in order to carry and sustain a democratic culture, certain institutions would speak up and become a source of scrutiny on the others. We haven't seen that happen. In fact, fourth Republican politicians have figured out the trick. The way to do is to capture those institutions. So you appoint onto the bench partisan hacks. You appoint onto every institution persons who are from, the partisan folks who do not have particularly, or who please party above state. For which reason there's a missing link. And the missing link is individuals. How can we get the public involved in the process of accountability? How do we ensure that the everyday Ghanaian becomes interested in the process of governance? And the only way to do it is to mobilize people, to ensure that the conversations around reform and accountability become sustained and ingrained, in fact, into the people's ways of life. And that's what we are about. And so in engaging them in this conversation, that was what the entirety of the process was about.
Tell me about the demonstration. What exactly was your target?
You know, in the past few weeks, we've seen so many professional bodies, organized labor, NGOs, all release critical statements demanding urgent action on the environmental crisis that is irresponsible mining. And one of the things that we have always been concerned about is sort of a disconnected approach to how we deal with these issues. For so long, we do not put a lot of emphasis on mobilizing ordinary folk and ensuring that they are part and parcel of the conversation. We do not put a lot of emphasis in bringing young people on board and ensuring that the things and demands we are making are actually driven by the energies of persons who can continuously hold government accountable. And so that's what the demonstration was about. We've been sitting aloof and there's been a lot of talk around Galamsey for so long. And this is the time that we are mobilizing all the actions. It's a critical moment where you feel like all hands must be on deck to ensure that the conversation stays and that urgent and credible actions are taken once and for all.
You mentioned Galamsey. We all heard of the report.
Yeah.
That was released by Professor Frimpong Boateng, which weren't really taken into consideration.
Yeah.
It was tagged as a hearsay and all that.
Yeah.
So the fight against Galamsey has come back again.
Yeah.
People are angry talking.
Yeah.
We are seeing waterfalls, turning into brown and all that. Now it was the streams that has gone all the way to waterfalls.
Yeah.
Tell me what actually goes through your mind anytime you think about these issues like this.
One of the things that I've come to concede is that we have not been able to mobilize enough people to see the evil of corruption. We've not been able people to understand the real effect of dysfunctional hospitals, of dysfunctional roads. And I say to myself, there must be at least one thing on which we tell the state that this must be cut out and must be cut out now. The idea that we as citizens can sit aloof and watch the entirety of our water bodies being poisoned to the point where the Ghana Water Company is saying that, listen, we cannot purify what we are getting. And so if we are getting to the point where we cannot supply water to our citizens, then we are going into some apocalypse that doesn't even make sense to me as a citizen. And I am completely frightened about what the stakes are for tomorrow and tomorrow's generation. And so we are asking ourselves that, okay, how do we drive home the urgency of the climate, of the environmental crisis? And all over the world, these environmental issues and environmental rights have become topical. So many people are mobilizing, particularly around issues of climate. And we are watching all this destruction happen. One documentary after the other, one report after the other. Just recently, the Fourth Estate did a comprehensive investigation to show us the intricate levels of politically exposed persons who are involved deeply in Galamsey. We heard the Speaker of Parliament talk about even members of Parliament are involved in this thing. So how are we just going to watch it to the point where we get to importing water into the country? It seems unfair. It seems something that must make our blood boil. So as far as we are concerned, there are no alternatives. There's no point out of negotiating out of this one. It is action, and it's urgent action now. That's what the conversation is about.
We also told that a 5-member committee has been set to investigate the report by Prof. Mpon. You see that as just a charade? You don't think to bring up any conclusion to it?
Before that, there was the presidential committee or interministerial committee, which devolved that those individuals who were supposed to be leading it were caught on taking bribes in order to protect Galamseyers in the mining sites. That's one of the individuals, Charles Bisu, is trying to get into parliament. So this is at the highest level of the presidency. Professor Premfon Boateng was the Minister for Environment. So reports indicts senior members of this government around the issue. So it's a cyclical pretense that in fact we are doing something about it. And I have been across the country, where some of the organizations that have been leading the conversations on the grass, one of the most important one, Arusha, Ghana, that we've joined their team and gone into many communities. And what we have seen is appalling. So we are sitting in Accra, and these things are happening across the landscape of the country. And yes, we may watch a documentary and then we just go on with our everyday lives. So how do we bring it to the city center of Accra? How do we make the ordinary people within the heart of government feel the urgency of what we're talking about? And it is important that the conversation should not become centered on this is not the responsibility of Face the Country Democracy Hub or any of the organizers who are leading this. This is only a window, a platform for all of us to jump on board and demand actions in different forms.
Did the demonstration also capture the fact that the NDC wants a forensic audit in the voter register? Did it capture that?
No, we didn't get into that conversation. I think one of the most important things about the way which we mobilize is that we know that a lot of the parties, those who are interested in the politics, are interested in the voting and the voter register and things like that. But this is in the history entirety, this is the first time non-partisan groups have demonstrated so close to election to draw attention to what we must focus on. The conversation must be centered on real issues. And this is what we are putting on the table as a policy conversation for voters to think about when they're going to the elections. Now, those other conversations can be had, and they're being had by more competent people than we. We are drawing attention to a crisis almost, right? Which threatens to imperil the life of this republic. And we hope that this plays as well on the minds of voters when they go into the polls as to what the stakes are.
Oliver, is there any political affiliation? You just mentioned that this is the first time we are having non-political individuals, hit the streets close to elections to demonstrate. But to ask the question in your face, is there any political affiliation to this?
We've been getting these questions from the very beginning since we started this. And we have always said, very often we are linked to the opposition and not the government. And I've always said that the NDC knows how to organize protests. And in fact, they did so on Tuesday without any help or any need for us to front for them, right? So when they want to they're able to mobilize. Are we saying that it is impossible for ordinary Ghanaians to understand the weight of the issues we're talking about in order to be motivated to come forward and speak up. It seems as if we're insulting our own intelligence as a people when we think that it is entirely impossible for we to understand that we have a role to influence the politics, to influence the governance and the key decision making in terms of how we move forward. We are interested in fact, the business of creating a third alternative. You know what that third alternative is?
Right.
We, the citizens, being involved in the process of auditing what the politicians do.
I mean, during the demonstration, a lot happened. You are quite unsure about the services rendered by the police on the day.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
You know, I think that we ought to admit and understand that the policing we get there's a historical legacy to it. It's a legacy that is dyed in the wool or the ink of systematic oppression. That's how the colonialists set it up. It has never been done as a service. We've changed the name from force to service. But its own mentality, its own orientation is one of force and brutal force that is. Now, I'm not just saying this. There's a lot of academic work that has been done on this for those who are interested in reading this. And one of the things that we are interested in is that we want the police to understand that in the process of a conversation around the freedom of assembly and all other things in dealing with citizens, that we must orient each other as partners in our democracy. That one is not the enemy and one is superior. In fact, there's more lawlessness and more violence that comes from the police than ordinary citizens. So they're not necessarily angels in the way in which we hold our democracy into account. We are both interested in that process. So our engagement consistently in the way in which we write to the police, for instance, in this protest, we wrote to them 3 months ahead of time, right? The law requires 5 days. Why did we give them 3 months? Because we don't want the conversation to be mired into the regular excuses. We don't have enough men, or this or that. Let us be prepared and think about a framework where constitutional rights can be enjoyed in a democracy. That's why we do what we do. So we continue to treat the police as partners. Unfortunately, we end up being the only adults in the room. In fact, on Saturday, at 2 a.m., coming into yesterday, the police released a statement indicating their intention to act as with brutal force as they did on Sunday. And we wrote to them demanding a meeting at 10 a.m. We sent their letter to the IGP. We called senior police officials. Myself spoke to their lawyers. And we demanded that let's have a conversation. You're not having conversations with us. You keep releasing things into the public domain. There's no engagement. There's no avenue for collaboration and compromise. Let us have a conversation. They told us that they're interested in dialogue. That is the concern.
Who told you this?
This is the Greater Accra Regional Commander, Ahin. That when we had a conversation, first I had a conversation with Bani, who is their lawyer. He said I should speak to the superintendent. I spoke to the superintendent for Accra Regional, the police command. He then spoke to his superiors. And his feedback that got back to us when he said he wanted to consult and get back was that they are not interested in dialogue. And we said, how can you not be interested in dialogue? Do you not understand that modern policing is conversation, not brute force? But it seems that that's the approach that they take. And unfortunately, you know, the level of political education and understanding of our rights to live as citizens is not sufficiently ingrained in we as a people. You know, and so we see that and we cheer them on when they act brutally against citizens. It reminds me, there's an interesting quote, in fact, by the MPP brought MPP versus IGP, which concerned the freedom of association. Right. And the Supreme Court held critically that irrespective of what citizens want to do, their right is not subject to the veto of the police. But most importantly, one of the judges said something. He said, for so long we've lived under oppression and brutal force that even when the doors of liberty have been flung open by our democracy, we are like a bird which has been caged its whole life and does not find its way to fly out. Our liberties and our ability to protect civil liberties is still caged. And this is the point where we go through the difficult process of freeing ourselves and how we engage with institutions, how they respect us as human and restore our dignity. That's all we're doing.
Do you think you, together with your team, in any way triggered the police to act the way they did?
You know, one of the things that we say is that we understand how the police act brutally. But we say that even if it is at the cost of our lives, or that they're going to arrest us or anything they do, we must make the point that constitutional rights must be respected. You fight for democracy. You fight for rights. You don't beg for it. And so when we step out onto the streets, we understand that these are individuals, even when they stop you and ask them, police, why have you stopped me? They get offended and get brutal with you. So they do not sufficiently understand the limits of what it means to live in a society in which force must be justified, but rights must always be respected. So when we go in there, they might read, and it's of course that it's been their way, that they might read genuine demand for respect of rights as provocation. But even when they do, we must make the demand. We must not resile in our duty to ensure that rights are respected. And so if the police take our actions as provocation, we understand where that logic is coming from, because the institution has not been reformed. But we will go through that process. As hard as it takes, we will drag ourselves along to ensure that the true democracy is installed in this country.
Oliver, there's a video of you, which earlier before we started speaking, I spoke to you about it, of you removing the keys of the police from a police vehicle and running away with it. What triggered that? Why did you do that?
So one of the things which is funny, actually interesting to me, is that I have seen different versions of the video which have been cropped out,
The video is doctored?
There are different videos which have been cropped out that do not show the full scene. The others now just show you more accurately what happened.
What happened?
So when we were at the grounds, one of the things is that we bring a little van that has all equipment inside. It has water, it has placards, it has medicine, it has food. There's a public address system. The vehicle that just came and was parked under the tree. And then we see police officers, and that's when the escalation even started from all of this. We see police officers start to go around the vehicle. Now, presumably, we understood that maybe they thought that we were going to use the vehicle to do anything. In fact, the vehicle was parked under the tree. So we said, oh, well, the vehicle is not moving. So I called even the driver, told him to lock the vehicle and remove a laptop that was in there. We can stand there, it's not a problem. Then shortly thereafter, we see them then bring in a tow truck.
Is that it?
We see them, so you see the vehicle there. We see them then bring a tow truck that you can see from the images. That they start then, despite the lives of the individuals there, they start pushing the tow truck right on our legs. And this was something that was very concerning and deeply concerning for us. And we're finding all kinds of ways to prevent them from towing the vehicle in which our supplies were in. This is a humanitarian vehicle.
What did it tell you before
there was no conversation.
There's
absolutely no conversation. Like there's a sense of non-engagement. You can see them in riot gear as if something's going to happen. Right? So the vehicle continues to back onto us. Eventually, you see them start pressing in on us. So you see them start pressing, you start them pushing on me with their batons, pressing into the vehicle. So I knew that we have to find a way to extricate ourselves. If not, people were going to get seriously injured. So then you would see me eventually find a way to walk out of the police vehicle, to go around the vehicle, to see how can we stop this vehicle continue to press on people in order to save lives. So then I go in there and I see that they had abandoned the vehicle and it was still on. So I put the vehicle off in order to stop it continue to press onto the protesters that was there. And what do? I moved towards where the other police were and threw the key towards them.
Because you gave the keys back to them.
I threw the keys back to them. Yes. So I ran towards them and threw the keys to them. That's all I did. I didn't try to move the car. I just wanted people not to be injured in that moment. We didn't take the key away because there's no point in doing that. But there's no justification. Absolutely not for what the police did. And we would make no apology. I certainly make no apology for demobilizing that vehicle for not causing harm to protesters. That I make absolutely no apology for it. And if the police think that is criminal, of course, let's go through the process of the courts. That is what a democracy is about. We can agree to disagree. But we have a democracy where recognizes, in fact, in several court decisions, that when the police act unlawfully, including unlawful arrest, you are entitled to even beat up the police. In fact, individuals have been recognized by a high court. And for those who think I'm lying, you can look at Asante and the Republic 1972 case, where the individual beat up the police, tore their uniform. And the court says, yes, that is what it means to have rights and prevent other people from doing that. But we did not even touch the police.
I don't think in this case we want violence.
Clearly, we have never even faced a violent intention. What did we do? Even though we are protected by rights, we turned off a vehicle. And now, if that is treason, so may it be. We turned off a vehicle to protect lives. And we won't walk away from the righteousness of that cause.
Now, aside this, during the day of the protest, you also made statements that the immediate info of the police were reporting false stories.
Yes.
Tell me about that as well.
You know, I think that the police have interestingly invested in a lot of gadgets. And the intention is to be ahead of the spin game. Apparently, the IGP is, they call him celebrity IGP. So he's invested in a lot of equipment in that regard. They have a Ghana Police TV, they're on TikTok, they're on Facebook, and whatever it may be. And whatever incident they may see, they go highlight it, blow it up on the media.
But isn't it make their work very proactive?
I wish it was, right? I wish that was what it was doing. But what were you seeing? Even as protesters were sitting safe, even as protesters were engaging themselves, even as protesters were playing football, the imagery that was being sent and the releases that was being sent was that we're being violent. And I know that language, particularly when it is used around young people, because it sets the stage for them to unleash violence onto protesters. And so we must be rigorous in pushing back against false narrative and misreporting. Nobody is above false news, and certainly we have seen the police do this several times. We know that we have a history where the police have blatantly lied to us. Asawase, individuals who were shot and killed, young people, and were branded as armed robbers. So we know in which the manipulation of information can trickle down to create a particular conversation. Even as I sit here with you, the police are going all over, releasing press statements claiming that there's a manhunt for me, suggesting as if there are roadblocks all over the city looking for me. When in fact, throughout yesterday, we're going police station to police station, looking for individuals who have been arrested. We were involved in that process, and at no point anybody was talking about arrest. So I kept asking, but why are we painting a different picture to the media? Why are we putting out narrative that suggests, there's some criminal violence? It doesn't serve any purpose. We must have de-escalation techniques. We have to know how to collaborate, dialogue. And we need that as we go into the elections. We need this country to be peaceful. And in that process, the police must know how to reform themselves in order not to participate. In an era where false news becomes rife, the police should not be leading the way in that.
Right. So that was a report by the Ghana Police Service who says they've launched a manhunt looking for him. Let me tell you this. At 12 noon here on Metro TV, this is what the headline read. Police launch manhunt for Democracy Hub convener Olive Vormawor following the arrest of 42 protesters on Sunday. Let us speak about the arrest of these persons. Yes. But before that, you were a practicing lawyer. Yeah. What are the intentions? What do you seek to... are you going to take on the police after this?
It's funny that you say that, because you remember last year, similar scenes happened. The police conducted themselves or misconducted themselves in the same way. We currently have sued them in the Human Rights Court in respect of that. Our intention is to get the conversation around the freedom of assembly to the Supreme Court. Because these things cannot continue. We must respect this right if we want to improve the substance of our democracy. So we are setting all of these up. We currently have 2 appeals in the Court of Appeal now. We have the human rights action, which is currently ongoing. Because we intend that the body and the richness of our jurisprudence around constitutional rights will be improved. So yes, that's the intention. That's the whole purpose. When we started from the very beginning, we said that our intention is to create a culture of protest. And that means reforming law, reforming policing, and pushing everybody into the conversation about what does it mean, what are the modern standards for how we police protest. So that's the intention in the long run.
But if someone wants to say that, you already have this case in court, and so you are in search of more evidence to back your case, would that be right, following what happened over the weekend?
Absolutely, I think they'll be right. I think that we want to continue to point the Ghanaians to the face of what their democracy and their police do every time. We want them to see, so we engage them civilly. We write to them, we ask for engagement, we show them what we expect a modern democracy should look like. And we turn around and see to Ghanaians and say, see how they are acting. Because in an institution that is used to its ways of doing things, it is only shame and ridicule that can improve the substance. There's something that is said, Louis Brandeis, a US Supreme Court Justice, says, sunshine disinfects. What does that mean? It means that when you turn light on something, transparency, it tends to have an improvement on the conduct of people. So yes, we want Ghanaians to see the misconduct.
But then there's been other demonstrations that took place and were peaceful, relatively peaceful. I mean, the Enough is Enough demonstration saw it being peaceful. In as much as we have some scuffles in the Ashanti region, in most of the regions, it was peaceful. So wouldn't it be that your demonstration was intentional to trigger the police to work the way they did, just to get evidence to back your case?
Okay. So one of the things that is important to understand, demystify, that when we talk about providing evidence of something, it's not manufacturing it. Do you understand? is showing the world what it is there is to see. So even legally thinking, you can't set up a set of events that are contrived and is manufactured. Okay? Now, let us be fair in this country. First, the country has organized so many demonstrations in this country, many of whom many journalists in this country have covered. There's not been one single incident where a protester has injured, thrown a stone, done anything to hurt a police officer. We have always ensured that in our engagement with the police, we show people that protest is a tool and a core part of our democracy. Now, what have we seen? For the past few years, since the country alone has received at least 7 injunctions from the courts placed on it. So it seems that everybody else is entitled to protest, particularly when it's a partisan protest.
Right.
But when it's a non-partisan protest, they have no respect for citizens when they mobilize outside of the political parties. And our interest is that the way in which this country will prove is not by continuously creating a partisan twist or ensuring that people are headed into partisan frameworks and how they protest. So if the police are interested in respecting partisan protests, they must give the same respect to when ordinary citizens mobilize. I may not have the clout, I may not have the weight of the NDC, of John Mahama, of Asiedu Nketia and others that they may cower in front of, or the persons who they know that may come and take over power, and so that they must treat them with decorum, so that when they come into power, they might get promoted. We don't have the power to promote anybody in the police.
Who knows?
service.
It might be a back notion for you.
We don't have the power to promote
It
anybody.
might be a back notion for you.
No, what back
for
notion?
later in the future.
No, if we wanted to contest the elections, we would have done so. There's no interest in that. Again, this is what we want to normalize. The idea that you don't need to be seeking power to stand up for what is right. In fact, the most progress has happened in the lives of democracy by individuals who are not mobilizing for power, but mobilizing for change.
Right. So don't go nowhere. I'm still here with lead convener of Democratic Hub, or Democracy Hub.
Democracy Hub, yes.
Democracy Hub, Oliver Baka Vormawor. And so I received this on the 22nd of September, and it says update on arrest and police handling of protesters. One says refusal to disclose total number of arrests. We are told as of this morning on 23rd that 42 persons are in the police custody. We'll find out from you if that is true. Denial of access to legal representation, lack of information on detainee locations, frequent transfers between stations, police stations, identified so far. I have the names here. Denial of basic necessities. I have it all here. And so after this break, when I come back, myself and Oliver Baka Vormawor will be talking about this. Don't go nowhere. It's still 1-on-1 here on Metro TV. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still here on 1-on-1 on Metro TV. I am Bright Nanakwasi Amenin, and my guest is still Oliver Baka Vormawor, lead convener of Democracy Hub, the organizers of the hashtag Fix the Country, hashtag Galamsey Must Stop, hashtag Occupy Julobi House is here with me tonight on the program. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's now talk about the update on arrest of some of your persons, which as at Monday, the 23rd of September, Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Day, we are told that 42 persons are in police custody. How true is this?
The truth is that we don't even know where the number came from. The police have not issued a statement, as far as we understand, confirming how many people have been arrested. Our engagements with them, they have refused to disclose that. In fact, you know, one of the beautiful things that have happened, 71 young lawyers, calling themselves lawyers for the defense of protests, have come up, going around from police station to police station, trying to engage the police hierarchy to let us know how many people have been arrested, how many are male, female, where they are being held. They refuse to give them audience. Lawyers have been able to, we've gone around, send activists around to try to find where people have been held. And trying to taking lawyers there. They refuse to grant audience, they refuse to grant people the right to counsel. We've provided food, water, and female hygiene products. They've refused to accept those and provide those to protesters. Now, this is where I want you to take a pause back and reflect. Irrespective of what you think about the freedom of assembly or protest, whether you believe in it or not, whether you think that there are other ways in which we can hold our democracy to account, and you for yourself do not believe in the freedom of protest, think to yourself whether it is a democracy where the police can take citizens, refuse to disclose how many of people they have picked up and arrested, refuse to give them access to give access to their family and relatives, refuse to give them access to lawyers, keep transferring them from station to station, sending people outside of Accra and dispersing them all over the city. We went all the way to Amanhia looking for people. Ayi Mensa police station, all over the city trying to find people. To the dead of night at 3 a.m., we still didn't know where people were. Refusing to give them food and water. Is this a democracy? Is this how we want to treat people with dignity, whose dignity is protected? So you may have, and the conversation will continuously be centered about citizens, but never on the institutions that we pay, that we train professionally, that we expect that they would uphold the law and the commitments that we have given to ourselves. For us, none of this makes sense. This is what we mean by, even if the police service disagrees or doesn't want to, we must drag them by the collar into the 21st century to show them what it means to have a modern police force. We cannot treat human beings as animals. That's what we are saying.
Are you worried? No, let me use the right word. Are you scared of the whereabouts of these people? Wondering what might happen to them as we speak?
We are completely devastated that people will be subjected to this situation and not have basic amenities provided to them. We think it doesn't make sense. Luckily, 2 children were also arrested, and 1 grandmother. We were able to get the release.
A grandmother was arrested as well?
Arrest of the grandmother, one of the children of 10 years old. It took later in the evening for us to be able to get the release of the 8-year-old child. 8-year-old child.
An 8-year-old child was arrested?
Yes, an 8-year-old child was one of the protesters who were arrested that the police kept. In fact, in our law, you cannot even prosecute an 8-year-old child. Not to think of arresting children. But this is the trauma we want to leave the children with. Persons, young people who have been sensitized, whose parents and grandparents wanted to give them an educational experience of what it is to stand up and fight for justice. These are the things that we want to traumatize them with. But none of this is surprising, right? Like I said, we are not there yet. The road to a democracy, and a true democracy, is long. And we have to keep on it. We have to keep dragging ourselves there. That tomorrow's children will not face the same thing that we are facing today.
I mean, what's the plan? The year hasn't ended yet. Election is in a few days away.
Yeah.
Before or when this case between yourself and the police is solved, probably before elections, do you plan on going on another demonstration?
You know, one of the things that I always say is that ordinary Ghanaians do not live their lives in 4-year cycles. Our problems are not 4-year cycle problems. They are everyday realities. The fact that our waters are being poisoned are everyday realities. The kind of things we are subjecting on a daily. Do not wait for the ballot box. For me, the ballot box it's a process that is part of the bigger conversation. It's not the end in all. And I see this happen all the time. You know, no matter how many times you engage Ghanaians, whether or not, listen, if you engage Ghanaians on December 9th, after they have voted, they will ask you, so who do we vote for next? What we are saying is that the process of improving a democracy means that beyond the ballot box, citizens must be involved in the process of holding people accountable. So this is not a conversation about voting or anything like that. It is one of the democratic tools, and those who are interested in the process should participate in it, but they can do so alongside. I always say that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Let us think of it that way.
We can walk and chew gum
at the same time.
At the same time. Like I said before the interview began, I told you that by the time the interview airs, you will be with the police.
Yes.
How do you intend to channel your communication to them?
No,
we're listening ear.
Yeah. You know, like I said, we've been in communications with them. And we've been waiting as to when they are ready. Okay? The latest is that we have been demanding for the release of all these persons who were involved. And their position is that they would only release those individuals if I turn myself in.
So you are the bait.
So that's, for me, I don't think that it's a brilliant word to use. I don't think that people should be used as a bait. I don't think that people should be held hostage in what we are fighting for. So I'm turning myself in right after this interview. That I'll be going to my lawyers at the Greater Accra Regional Police Headquarters. And we'll turn ourselves in. Like, it's intended to, and they can do whatever they want. Because I'm prepared for it. Because I believe in the righteousness of the cause we are on. And even beyond righteousness and democracy, but also in the legality of the actions and cause of actions we've taken. And we are inviting them to do so. or to prove otherwise. But the idea that citizens will be held as ransom for another, it's extremely laughable for me. But watch the press, and I think that this is what's going to happen. Even after we have turned ourselves in, and we can send you a video of myself walking in there freely, it will be declared that their manhunt have picked me up somewhere. Because this is an institution that must always project itself with force and a sense of superiority rather than conversation and dialogue. That they must always paint a picture. So I bet you, by the time this interview airs, they would go about claiming that the manhunt has ended up in my arrest. Because truth does not lead the way in which we proceed in this country. But that's, for us, it's not about the PR game. It's not about who looks good in terms of the media and how they portray it. It's about the substance of our democracy and what it means for tomorrow's children. It is about the urgency we attach to this conversation of environmental degradation that is happening around us. There is no alternative. There's no alternative. If you destroy the environment, it's irreparable. Corruption we can fix at some point, but not the environment. Do you understand? So I don't want the conversation to be centered around me of this. We want the conversation to be centered around the critical issues around the environment. And once we're out of this, I promise you, we'll do another protest before the year ends. Because for as long as it takes for this democracy to reform, we are prepared to go the long haul.
What type of message do you want young people, to get from what that you've been doing?
A lot of the times when we're mobilizing, we've always talked about that our audience is young people. Because we understand the stakes. We understand that this is a young democracy, where the average age is below 18 years. We understand that it's their future which is at stake. But beyond that, one of the things that I have said that today that broke my heart the more is that we've seen so many NGOs, professional bodies, what have you, all issue statements calling for immediate action on tackling galamsey.
Legal mining.
Right? They've all said this. They've talked about it must stop now with all the urgency and anger that paper can convey through those press statements. But we're seeing a different, they're not walking the talk.
Why do you
understand?
Why do you think it's so difficult for us to tackle the issue?
I don't understand. For me, this is one of I always say that insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results. We have issued those press statements for how many years now? We've stood on the backside. We have continued to engage ourselves in a dialogue of the deaf. We're not listening to each other. The only way in which we move forward is to ensure that the conversation is not elite-driven. It's not NGOs trying to engage the government beyond closed doors. It has not worked and it won't work. The way forward is to ensure that the 31 million other Ghanaians, that we deploy their strength and their agency and their demand for reform. We must engage them and mobilize them. In the same way the political parties mobilize people for elections, we must mobilize people behind greater environmental and social justice causes. That, for me, is the future. When individuals, our founding fathers, wanted to get us independence, they didn't do so through press statements. They mobilized people to boycott European goods and services. They mobilized people to march to Christiansborg Castle. They brought people onto the streets. They were all arrested. There's no single individual. In fact, we talk about Kwame Nkrumah today. Kwame Nkrumah, at the time he became leader of government business, was serving a 3-year sentence in jail. He had to come out of jail. All those who were leading the independence movement were all jailed. In fact, it became the practice of the CBP that anytime anybody came out of prison, they gave them caps with PG, prison graduates on them. When I have 42, hopefully there are no more individuals come out of police custody, we're going to give them sashes, prison graduates. Because prison should have no hold on our imagination and our resolve to hold our democracy accountable.
Is that not almost what you are saying? Because it looks like you are toying towards that line.
Yes.
Wanting to be known for the man who fought for the right and freedom of people and went into jail and came out and is now the flag bearer of this or flag bearer of that. Don't you think that's where you are heading towards to? Just give me an example of Kwame Nkrumah and all that.
This is one of the things that I think it's important. That in Nkrumah's generation, there are many more people that stood up for the right, for freedom. Okay? Now, I do view what we are facing and what we are living in as demanding a second independence, a freedom of us and a triumph of individuals over what we are currently experiencing and the kind of politics that we are served. This is a fight for dignity. Okay? So I make those references because they inspire me. The idea that all these individuals, that Nkrumah could leave a PhD program and come and stay in this country and mobilize ordinary citizens. When people told him that these people were mad, when he was called a communist, they were called criminals, and yet they stayed the good cause. And critical mass of Ghanaians were able to achieve for you and us all what we teach our children to protect, the cost of freedom and of rights, that we must speak with fearless honesty. So we cannot speak with with our mouths here and act differently. But it has to be clear to us that the project of demanding freedom for everybody should not be reduced into thinking that if I stood up and joined the demand and fight for everybody else, one individual might tomorrow become elected. I am willing to walk away and leave this country if I see a critical mass of Ghanaians on the streets. It is not about me. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is not about me. I want a different society. So, and of course, a lot of people don't know this, but there are parties going into elections which have asked me to be vice president to back their tickets, which I refused and wrote them letters saying that that is not my interest and objective.
You've got the offer.
You see, in time reveals all. You see, so the process and the project of what we are trying to accomplish is bigger than that. It truly is bigger than thinking of parochial interest. And trust me, and you would attest to this, it is far more easier today for me to get into the politics by joining any of these other two parties than the route we have taken. This is such a difficult route. But this is the only route that leads to freedom.
But it makes you more popular.
No. Popularity has no meaning when people are suffering and dying.
But in politics, it has.
That's what I'm saying, that popularity has no meaning. It is vain. We must recognize the vanity of those things. And for me, I'm telling you today that those are vain. Those are not our objective and interest. I am committed to the idea that a lot more young people need to run for office. But they should do so in a way that does not reinforce the politics of the duo. That politics must be reformed. And so I'm willing to support any candidate out of that sells me and convinces me they are committed to a journey that does not repeat. And I don't want anybody to sell repetition to me as progress or renewal. No.
Is there one now, as we speak, is there one that you think has been able to sell to you the ideas you believe will transform the country? Is there one now? One of the things to elections.
Yes. One of the things I say is that I've written that one of the things I don't understand is that why do our saviors only show up in election year? I'm looking for people who have walked the walk with us, who have mobilized with us, who understand the urgency of the problems, and not rise up 6 months to election and say that I am now the new Ajankwa, I am the Osajifo, and so vote for me. It's not proven to me. Do you understand what I'm saying? And like I've said to you, that I think that the third force really is the people mobilizing. Social groups mobilizing, farmers mobilizing, cocoa farmers across the country. Galamsey has reduced the cocoa farms across this country to 1/3 of what it used to be. We have lost our global position in the cocoa industry. Food security is at risk because farms are being chopped down across the country. I think every Ghanaian needs to travel across the country to show that the repercussions of this is wide and far stretched that way is. But we are not seeing these groups mobilize together, band together. We are not seeing environmental groups band together, as it is happening in the West. That is what we need to take our democracy to before we think about personal and individual ambitions. No.
On a regular, how does Oliver Vormawor live his life? I mean, on a regular. Are you able to stay at a place for 2 days or even 3 days, looking at what you've been doing?
You know, one of the things I've always said is that I understand the risk of what we are doing. Because for a long time, history has shown us that those who speak up against the status quo are the ones who become enemies and are portrayed as enemies of the state.
Right.
And this government has spent a great deal of resources, and media resources, to portray what we are doing as dangerous to Ghanaian values. The police released a statement calling us un-Ghanaian, even. So I understand the branding.
I bet it might be the act and not the individual. The un-Ghanaian tag.
The un-Ghanaianness is us. The portrayal of us as individuals is to show as a person whose values do not reflect that of the society, when the contrary is in fact true. Those who are demanding for us to live to the principles of freedom and justice that is in our coat of arms, they are in fact what it means to be patriots of this country. But I understand the branding effect of that, and the danger it exposes us to all the time. It is not lost on me that the state spent a lot of resources, brought vans and snipers, and portrayed me as this person wanted to overthrow the republic. And then after that media campaign, I'm still waiting for that trial to start, where evidence of our intention to overthrow the democracy would be shown. What we are doing is not to subvert our democracy, but to improve its substance. So the persons who play these games, who perform, believe in democracy, but unleash the military upon us like in a shaman and keep quiet. Unleash the military on us in Nigeria and keep quiet and look the other way. Not even in the military areas, as the military descended onto civilians in the city and beat up people mercilessly. But this is happening in the Fourth Republic.
I mean, when the protest that happened in Kenya was happening, people were asking why Ghanaian youth are so calm and collective and why they're not doing the same as what is happening there. And I said, in as much as we are angry or we want something, I don't think we'll go to this extent. How do you ensure that all this the demonstration you are organizing doesn't transform into something like that?
You know, one of the things which is bizarre, and I think it's also a cultural thing, that we associate, I don't know why, demonstrations to violence. A lot of times the violence is coming from the state. If the state was not violent against people, it is not going to. We're not going anywhere with this. But let me show you something.
There are instances where the people participating end up vandalizing properties that actually triggers the police to act the way they act.
I have never been. I understand that. I've never been in one, and I've not seen that happen yet in my lifetime. I have never been in one, and I've not seen that happen. Okay, and I've lived in the UK. Every single day at Trafalgar Square, there's close to 100,000 people protesting different causes with no police in sight. None. In fact, I have organized a protest in the UK before. No police involvement. None of this route gear and setting up for war mentality that pervades the ways in which we exercise our rights in this country. Okay? So I have seen beyond what we have. And I believe we can get there. We can drag ourselves there. But talking about Kenya and the protests, one of the things I said, and I was saying that those people who were on social media, our civil society that were telling Ghanaian youth that Ghanaian youth are not angry enough. What do you want to see from Ghanaian youth? Ghanaian youth are very angry, but they are not organized. It is not about protest, it's not about unleashing anger. It's about mobilizing people as conscientious citizens, as active citizens to demand accountability, not to unleash anger. But the beauty of Kenya, and look at the difference here, is that the Law Society of Kenya, the medical profession of Kenya, organized unions and organized labor, churches, all stood up and said that no, the young people are right. We stand with them and we'll come onto the streets with them. Lawyers were protesting. It galvanizes a society to show that this is a moment where we must speak up collectively with one voice and demand reform. Not in Ghana. They look away. They're looking for the most basic thing to criticize protesters and never police misconduct. We have created the monster that is this oppression.
I remember as one of the songs on Twice as Tall, Burna Boy's album, that actually featured the late Amateru, a song on there called Monsters You Created.
Yes.
Just to quote that.
Yes.
Anyways, your demonstration on the day, regardless what happened, do you think the message you wanted to convey was successfully sent to whoever needed to hear?
We think that the message is across the country. We're talking about it now, right? In the eve of me turning myself into the police, my conversation has not been about myself. It has still been about this issue. Because no matter how much they try, we will maintain the focus on the issue. And many more people are talking about it across the country. But the work is not done. You understand? The work, you see, this is one of the things we want to avoid. And this is why we've done a 30-day demonstration. That it can't be a fanfare, a carnival, where we march from one point A to point B and go home. We stay there and demand answers. We stay there for them to see the urgency of it. So it is a progressive mobilizing. And as we are progressively mobilizing people, the actions and these processes must continue to take place as we go forward.
Right. We have just 2 minutes to wrap up, Oliver. But before we go, once again, by the time this interview ends, you will be in the custody of the police.
Yes.
What are you telling Ghanaians? That's your camera.
Well, the truth is that I do think that the conditions under which I am going to be held today detracts from human dignity. It's one of the cases we sue the police on. That we put people into cells that are supposed to contain less than 5 people and we push over 100 people in there. There's no ventilation in there. There's no proper sanitation in there. People are not fed. No water is provided. All of those things, those jail conditions are things that detract from dignity that the Constitution protects against. But, anything that brings attention to where we are, the crisis, that's fine. But I think in going, I want people to remember this, that this is not about whether or not you agree with us or me as an individual, and that you may have a different of opinions about the ways in which we see where we are going as a country, or our rights as citizens, or how police ought to engage with citizens. But even in our disagreement between you and I, our focus together must be on the crisis that is ahead of us. If you believe that you have a different approach, do not stay home. Show that approach. Show a different way of doing it. We must all be involved in the process. It's not an individual responsibility. This is all we are asking for. That all of us must be implicated in the fight for a different tomorrow. And everyone must do it.
Thank you. And I'll be here with Oliver Baka Vormawor, lead convener of Democracy Hub, organizers of hashtag Fix the Country, hashtag Galamsey Must Stop, hashtag Occupy Julobi House. I am Bright, the Nakwesi Amini, and this is 101. Good night.
Okay.